Intertalk Radio, you're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Intersect here on the Intertalk Radio Network. Today is September the 19th, 2017, and we have a very special broadcast for today. Today I have in the studio with me members of the Ragamuffin Band, Rich Mullins' band back in the 90s. Did a lot of records together, touring together. And I'm very fortunate to be able to have them all collected here in my little room. We have Mark Robertson, Jimmy Abag,
hello,
and Rick Elias. Yeah, they're all here, folks. And we're here today to remember Rich. Today is the 20th anniversary of his passing, and we just wanted to get together and share some of our feelings and thoughts about Rich and how he inspired us and his music. Maybe even some stories about being on tour. Just some stories about being on tour, not all of them. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to Mark Robertson. He was the bassist for the group. Jimmy Abag, guitarist, Rick Elias, guitarist, and these three guys also sang background vocals. Rick was the lead vocal for the Ragamuffin Band during our last tour and record together, and producer, songwriter. We all contributed in songwriting and that deal for the Jesus record and the record that followed, the Ragamuffin Band, Prayers for a Ragamuffin. So we have a lot of very talented people here in the room today. So, gentlemen, I'd just like to start off. Anybody can start off and just introduce yourself and tell us about your experiences with Rich. And anybody feel free to interject, cut somebody off. It's all good time. Here we go.
As much as we'd like to think we're going to hang out just to hang out because we want to, and we do, you hit a point in life where you got to make excuses to do it. You got to come up with a reason. So just, I was happy to hear we were doing this, just so we'd have a reason to sit in a room together, and force that to happen. So we spent a lot of time together, man, and a lot of really great, really dark, the whole thing. It's like all the boredom of being in a van for days in a row and weeks in a row, and all the places we've been. I see these occasional pictures. I go like, oh, that's us in Italy or something, and then it kind of seems like 20 minutes ago. And then you realize it's been a few years since we've even had a cup of coffee. So it's really great in that regard for me just to sit in a room with you guys again.
Yeah. So what have you been up to recently, Mark?
Oh, man, I play bass. That's produced a couple records, and I just produced and played on the new Eskimo Brothers record. Just did a fella named Zach Ryan, really great up and coming artist, and Derek Hoke, of course, and did a couple records and some TV stuff with a guy named Mark Colley, and who's still out there doing it, and a couple gigs with Billy Bob Thornton's band, that
cool
Masters thing, and that was a really fun experience.
And you were telling me you did 2 gigs yesterday.
I did.
It's not fair, man. I didn't do one gig yesterday. You did 2.
Well, it was just Eskimo Brothers gig. They do, when we're off the road, we play downtown. Do those kind of tourist gigs. You play for 4 hours, no breaks. It's quite a slog, but then I had to haul the mail across town to make my Derek Hoke gig. So,
you play 4 hours without a break?
We do doubles usually on Tuesday. We do 8 hours without a break.
So what happens when somebody has to go to the bathroom?
Somebody plays an acoustic song. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's cool, It keeps me out of gangs and all that.
So how did you meet Rich? What was your introduction?
I met him. I guess Rick and I became friends probably, 6-7 years before I ever met Rich. And Rick had asked me to do this tour. It was a really long one, as I recall. We were playing with Margaret Becker. And that was like 4 months or something. It was really long. And I just relocated to Chicago. Rick had just been in Nashville a short time. So he asked me if I'd go out and play bass. And I didn't even have anywhere to live in Chicago yet, so heck yeah, and we went, and we played somewhere in Texas.
Union Arena.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, what do they call the Bronco Bowl or something?
Yeah, it was something like that.
I was with Rich.
Yeah. And so Rick tells me, he's like, hey, we're opening for this dude. You're really gonna like him. He's really weird and cool and likes cool books and stuff like that. So we get there, and I think I'd met Jimmy before when he was playing with Charlie, but we weren't really pals or anything. And but we just hung out, and everybody hit it off really, really well. And Jimmy was playing bass, which I thought was kind of awesome. And I didn't know you played bass yet at the time. And
I remember thinking there were like 100 people in that band.
There was,
but I mean there were a lot.
There was a lot of people.
Band. I mean, you were one of the primary guys.
Can't hear that mic either.
Can't hear that mic either?
You can't hear my mic?
Nope.
You want to figure this out?
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear it now?
Not very well.
Can you hear me now?
Try Jimmy's mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm on Aaron's mic. We're passing that around, I guess.
No, you're on Jimmy's.
Or Jimmy's mic.
We'll just stick to these two.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
He had a 100-piece band, it seemed like.
it did. It was. And I remember that there was something very. It was, I had met Rich on a trip to Guatemala in 90 or 91. I can't remember what it was, Compassion International trip. And then I had met Gay, his manager, and she was the one that was I knew her, but she really wanted to do something kind for me because we were out on the road toughing it. We were you remember how tough that tour was. Yeah. We didn't get hotel rooms until the Margaret's band left for the next town, so we might get the hotel room at 2 a.m, and then we'd have to get up and drive all day to make it by sound check. And Gay knew I hadn't seen my kids and Linda, my wife, for quite a while, and did she bring her out, or she said she was going to bring her out? It was a big surprise. She wanted to surprise me by having Linda there. I think she did have Linda fly out.
She did.
And it was just such a nice personal thing to do. I mean, I had no connection to Rich professionally or to Gay. They just were very kind to me, and I never forgot that. And it was toward the end of that tour. I remember it was like, it was like the Monty Python sketch. It's like first we went out as a 4-piece or something like that. Then, Linda can't stay out, so we're a 3-piece. Well, let's send the drummer home because we can't afford him anymore. The label went belly up.
We had 2 drummers on that tour.
Then it was just Mark and I. Then it's like, geez, I don't know if I can keep Mark out here anymore. By the last date, it was just on life support. And it was so nutty, but I remember being so demoralized. And I think we were still playing together. I think I could still keep you out. We were in Oklahoma City, and Gay came down, took me out for coffee, and said, "Don't be depressed. Rich and I have an idea." And it was about the Ragamuffin Band. And she just told me a little bit, not much. And that, because I was on my way out the door of Christian music after that tour. It was like, I can't do this. No more of this.
So I never knew it was your band that was opening for Rich. Rick.
No, it wasn't just one night.
Just
show.
one night. Oh, just one show. Oh, okay. How did whose idea was that? How did that come about? Did you have yeah. Okay. All right. And Gay. Okay.
I'm assuming. Yeah.
Huh.
Well,
So
I remember watching that show and being quite taken by Rich. The initial things were very funny to me because, so I've seen Jimmy play a bunch of times with Chuck. You got this super picker playing bass with a bunch of people that just kind of seemed like his pals from church. You know, they weren't like pro players. It was just this thing he threw together. But he had that thing, you know, that he had his whole life, you know, that he could grab you, that weird Garrison Keillor story thing. And it was just funny to me. It's like, so you're wasting Jimmy completely, you know, and it was just hysterical. But you got caught up in the spirit of it for sure.
Yeah, I remember that was a very funny night because I ended up, that was kind of the luck of the draw, and not to get too protracted because I met Rich very recently before that and then got offered this tour. And of course I said yes because like Rick, I'm, you know, listening to the wind blow. And I thought, yeah, this could be really good. And I'm out there, and for some reason that Texas gig was a really big one. I mean, it was super well attended and packed house, big room, like a small arena, as I recall. And I remember sitting in the back with, at the time, Bill Horn and Peter York, my A&R guy on Sparrow at the time, and the president of Sparrow. And we were sitting and watching what was then Mark Robertson, Rick Elias, and I think a kid named Mike Radofsky playing drums, three-piece, and they were tearing it up. And Bill said, you know, we're looking at this guy. We're thinking, you know, this could be good for us. And so, just so you know, I don't know if I ever told you that, but Peter and Bill were sitting there going, man, they must have known that whatever label you were on was not doing its job, because they felt like, right, well, they knew that if they could just get you in front of the right people, that it would be. So anyway, there was that talk, and then there was talk about me doing a second record on Sparrow, which I declined because, like Rick, I'm thinking, man, I don't know if this is my future. And ironically, it was my future. But I was trying to sandbag my prospects, I guess. Yeah. And but you're right, Mark. When I moved literally to Wichita for 2 weeks of rehearsal with the kids, which I will affectionately call them Kyle and, you know, Lee and Nikki and all of the people that were Avenue G and Rich's new backup band. They were amateurs, you know. I mean, they were on their way to something maybe, but in my book, I just got off the, you know, a Learjet band. I mean, it was crazy with Chuck. It was like working in, you know, I shan't go there, but it was
very professional.
It was very professional. Every nook and every cranny was well tended. And with Rich, he wanted it broken and not fixed and leave it messy. And it was a deliberate attempt to anti-commercialize his efforts.
Tear it down.
Tear it down, baby. Yeah, no, if you're going to play guitar, we have to take 2 strings off and you have to tie up your 3rd and 4th finger. We have to create a handicap so that we will all suck equally. And unfortunately I took the bait and I got used to that. So by the end of it, by the end of our run, even as the Ragamuffin Band, I remember specifically an argument that I entered into with a unnamed opponent, wherein it was revealed that we were missing all sorts of stuff because I just had cultured an I don't care attitude over the course of about 10 years, and I ran with that.
Yeah, well, the arc of the band, I mean, we'll get into that later, I guess, is it definitely did kind of, even before Rich passed, I mean, it was kind of going, he had finally put together a band. He had finally put together a proper band, and, we all spoke with him in those last months. I think he had a renewed energy and vision for his career that I had never heard before from him. I had never heard it. I mean, he was looking 5-10 years down the road. I'm sure he would have figured out a way to screw it up and undermine it because, like Jimmy said, I'm telling you, Rich was punk rock, man, in attitude. It was sort of like tear it down and deconstruct this thing. And it was our job to kind of try and buttress it and bring it up to a certain level. But there was always that Sturm und Drang in there between his desire and our attempt to make it presentable.
All right, folks. Thank you. This is good stuff here. We're going to have to take a break now. Thank you to Pitbull Audio and Studio Instrument Rentals for sponsoring Intertalk Radio. And after these words from our sponsors, we'll be right back with more from the Ragamuffin Band.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
The Moyer Entertainment Group, in conjunction with ProMark, Dunlop, and Deadline Media, is keeping music in our local schools and presenting local talent to the world through the Temecula Valley Music Awards. Submissions for entry into the TVMA 2017 season are now open in all genres, including a youth category for artists under 18 for the October 7th Star-Studded Awards Show, where 100% of the proceeds go towards supporting local music education in the Temecula Valley. Details, tvmawards.org.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al DiMeola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be the music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Remember, you did not choose me.
Welcome back, folks. We are here in the studio today with the Ragamuffin Band, and we're all talking about our experiences with the late Rich Mullins, recording, touring, and just hanging out with him, and very fond memories. It's a very exciting time for all of us, and a very exciting time in contemporary Christian music as well, and we were very fortunate to be a part of that. But just before we left for a commercial break, we were talking about our beginnings with Rich. And Jimmy, you were telling us about your first time going to a rehearsal. And I remember that you actually opened for Rich as a solo artist before playing. I mean, in every gig. Mm-hmm. And then you played in his band, right?
It was a little different than that. In fact, this is how unconventional he was. He would come out and sing for an hour. We would play an hour's worth of band music, which would be maybe, I want to say 13 songs or so. And then he would introduce me, and I would play for half an hour to a hopelessly depressed audience because Rich just left. And I'm this poor, it's like I just was like a little naked dog, just like going, here's this song I wrote about blah, blah, blah. And I'll never forget that on the one hand, that was a great benefit. He did that, I think, with you, Rick, and I think he did that with you, Mark, in this train. He liked, like, kind of satisfying the initial desire of everybody in the house that's wanting to hear him sing, anything but awesome God. And then he would, throw us to the whims of fate. And then we would reassemble and play for another hour as the band. So it was both generous and kind of excruciating all at the same time. Because for me, I had never cultured a solo artist career in my life. I mean, this was a brand new thing for me, and I was not good at it. I mean, it was really pretty bona fide terrible. But we'll let that lay. But the fact is, that it was a good lesson, and more importantly, it gave me a chance to really live in a world that I didn't know anything about, because I had certainly been a part of a lot of what we were doing on the West Coast. In what was, I guess, contemporary Christian music. I hate to belittle it by calling it that, but it really was faith-based, bunch of Jesus freaks making music, I think. And so we met this cultural cloud of income-generating commercialism, which was what I would call CCM music. And in the middle of that, lucky me, I'm working with a guy who is going against the grain in every way that I was too. And so it was a fantastic opportunity for me to share a philosophical, in some ways metaphysical space regarding what we do with our music, and finding a keen, certainly a gifted songwriter on every level, and a pretty notoriously uncareful friend. He was a fantastic friend, but he played favorites. So he had a tendency to, he might get you mixed up with somebody else and yell at you for something that you had nothing to do with, and then be nice to the guy that's like setting him up for disaster. So he was not a really good in the moment. In many ways, I think that was something that I had to get used to, because I was used to a kind of a professional, collegiate exchange among my brethren and women who were in bands together. And with Rich, it was the star and everybody else. And so it was, it was awkward, but it was certainly fruitful for me, because that, like Rick intimated earlier, sometime around the end of a tour, which was that one. He asked me if I would be a part of this band that he was forming called the Ragamuffin Band, which was in its infancy and incubation period. But I was very excited about that because I really, the friends in this room will know that I love being a part of a club that only us get to be in. So I was very excited about getting to be in that club for whatever duration that would be. Little did I know it would be about 8 years of my life.
When I had talked to Gay a little bit about that, I knew, correct me if I'm wrong, my memory's not the best, but Rich had it in him to take artists he thought were great, but not getting what they necessarily deserved or whatever, didn't have the profile he thought they should have. And that started with Rick and Jimmy. This is my memory. Okay. Oh, yeah, and Billy Crockett. And then he let, at least when I came into the picture, he let you guys pick the rhythm section. One of you got to pick one guy, one of you picked the other. And Rick was kind enough to ask me to tag along, which I think was an unpopular idea with a few people, but Rick really did fight for me, and I really did appreciate that. And Jimmy picked Aaron. And then Rich started supporting. Eventually, it was a hard-won thing for me personally, because I didn't think Rich particularly cared for me for the first year. But we became very dear friends.
Yeah.
But he started supporting all of our artists' careers.
Mm-hmm.
And really gave us that leg up, even all the way to the Jesus record when you think about it, because he told us he wanted us to make a record without him.
Mm-hmm.
And we all formed a mutiny against that, particularly Rick, saying no one wants to hear us sing, they want to hear you sing.
Right.
And Rick, it worked out that we had to do what Rich wanted.
Right. I remember being at the NAMM show, summer NAMM show, and seeing Rick and Jimmy from a distance. You guys were walking together, and Jimmy shouted out to me, "Aaron, what are you doing? We're going to call you." I'm going, "What?" "Yeah, we want to ask you something. I'll call you." So, okay. See ya. And that was the when you did call, you called about that. And then I think after that I heard from Gay. But prior to that, I had only known of Rich Mullins when I first started commuting to Nashville from Sacramento. I would stay with Jan at Jan's house, and Jan was managing Chuck at the time. And so Jan had all these records, because he would get all these CCM records just by being Chuck's manager. And I remember sitting down in his collection and flipping through the albums, and I come up on a Rich Mullins album, and it's this slick back guy with his fashionable camping gear on, very colorful. He's sitting by the campfire by himself, and I go, "Who is this?" And then Jan says, "That's Rich Mullins. He's some crazy guy, I said, "Boy, he doesn't look too crazy. He looks pretty cosmopolitan here, And then I meet Rich, and it's nothing like that. He's like the complete opposite of that album cover. What was being presented, and I came to realize that he probably grimaced having to do that photo shoot. And having to say yes to that and go along with that. And I can see, so it gave me some insight to him, the fight against the establishment and what his music should be like, what his presentation should be like, what he should say from the stage and all that sort of stuff, because he did his own thing and there was nobody else like him. People loved it. He just shot from the hip. I did a gig with Michael Card once. Michael Card talked a lot too, but it was like Mike pretty much came from the Old Testament, and he would talk about the Old Testament, and kind of knew what he was going to say because the whole show was set up around a certain theme of the Old Testament. Rich didn't have a theme, he just told you what was on his mind and what he thought about Christians, contemporary Christian atmosphere or thinking and stuff like that, and how he saw the world as as from his viewpoint as a believer and as a Christian. And I think it touched a lot of people and kind of gave them some free reign of thinking apart from the thinking you get in church and how you come out of
rules
church.
and regulations.
Yes, exactly, because he was a rule and regulation breaker.
I can only imagine what it must have been like to be there on stage with Michael Card when he proclaimed it was circumcision night for his gig. They were going to concentrate on that as pertains to the Old Testament. That must have been a laugh riot. No, the thing with Rich was, and I'm not sure that I understood it immediately when we went in to record Liturgy, but in looking back, I came to understand it relatively quickly that he had come from a typical, you're a new artist, the label's going to tell you what to do, who to work with, who's going to produce you. The producer, he had a very strong producer, strong-willed producer, and Reed Arvin. Reed brought in the creme de la creme of session guys, and Rich really had very little input into that, as I understood it from Rich. So by the time we met him, the thing with the Ragamuffin Band was his attempt to surround himself with, I believe, better players, but still kind of keep, like Lee was in there, but the labels and the producers still managed to bring in session players. So it was still a hybrid project. And by the next album, that was done. And I think a lot of that DIY ethic he had and just deconstructing his music and not caring about if somebody can sing in key or if they can even play an instrument, we're just going to go out there and do this, had to do with, it was an absolute rejection of what he'd been through in the previous 5 to 10 years of the manipulation. And look, we're all big boys. We've all been in the music business. I'm not saying all those decisions were wrong for Rich. They might have given him the audience that he wound up having. But he also, in his writing, and this is the important part to me, he was a natural-born corporate praise and worship writer. He came from that subculture. He understood the language. He understood the nuances of it. And he could write a sing your praise to the Lord or awesome God. By the time we met him, that he was moving into a more personal direction. And he could still do that. My Deliverer, it could be argued, is kind of a corporate praise and worship song of sorts. But, now we're getting Hold Me Jesus. And even prior to us playing with him, the lyrics to Calling Out Your Name are just astonishing. Pure poetry. The color green. The stuff he was writing, he was getting more and more personal and getting better and better at it. And it would have been absolutely fascinating had he lived to see where he went from there. Because not too many artists, I'm all about personal. I couldn't write a corporate worship song if you asked me to. I'm not from the subculture. I don't even know what that stuff is. Some people, they just do praise and worship. And they're very good at it. He was that artist that could somehow put it all together. And he could do both. And he really was probably the best single Christian songwriter of his era. Oh, yeah. I think when it's all assessed, there were very, very many talented people, but it was his artistry that really, and his friendship. It can be, he could be a tough friend. You skipped over it. He liked you, but he used to get on you.
It was rough, man. Yeah. I don't know if this one works, but the first, I can't remember, after the end of the first tour, Rick and I were already pretty close by then, And we had our own kind of sense of humor, which if you were outside of that two-man circle, just wasn't funny at all. But it was very funny to us. And that comes from van boredom and just sitting around, and things become funny. But he gave me this huge lecture about it at the end of the first tour. I went up and I thanked him for the opportunity. It was a 6-week tour. And I thanked him for it. He's like, well, Rick got you the gig. Don't talk to me. I said, well, yeah, I know, but you signed the checks. And I just wanted to say, and he just gave me such a hard time and explained to me in great detail why I thought I was a funny person, but was not. I thought maybe he was being funny. I couldn't tell, so I just kind of went with it the way we would. Went down that kind of Kaufman-esque sort of thing. And then, like, 6 months later, I'll never forget, I get a phone call, my first phone call ever from Rich, and he's laughing his butt off. He's like, dude, I'm listening to your record. He goes, you're really funny. And then somehow that broke the ice and we became friends. But it was hard-earned.
So he heard the Just This Train record?
Yeah, the first one, yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's great. I never knew you had difficulties with Rich. I thought you were in the pocket with him, but we'll get back to that.
You would be wrong.
Yes. We're going to take another break, folks. I'm here with the Ragamuffins today. We're talking about our dear friend Rich Mullins. We're going to take a break to thank Pitbull Audio and Studio Instrument Rentals for their support of the Intertalk Radio Network.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on intertalkradio.com.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Well, sometimes my life just don't make sense at all. When the mountains look so big, on my faith just seems so small. So hold me, Jesus, 'cause I'm shaking like a leaf.
Welcome back. We are here in the studio today with my guest, the Ragamuffin Band, and we're talking about our time and experiences with the late Rich Mullins. And in the last segment, we were all reminiscing how we all met Rich individually and how we came together as the Ragamuffin Band and just how that all transpired. And for this last segment, I would like to ask the fellows individually, starting with Rick Elias, just what did you get from your experience with Rich?
Well, like I said, I was on my way out. I did not come from a Christian upbringing, certainly not any sort of mainstream evangelical kind of Christian background. I did go to a year and a half, I think it was, of Christian college, but I washed out of that and then went into the music business and wound up back there. I wrote this music and got signed to a Christian label, which went belly up, and it had become apparent to me that I wasn't part of that tribe. I mean, I just didn't think those people, by and large, understood where I was coming from, and I didn't really understand what they were talking about. And so I had pretty much decided, hey, that's it. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I just want to make music, and if I can do it behind the scenes, whatever. And when Rich pulled me back in, it was a godsend financially, certainly, just to have some employment. But it also opened my eyes to the fact that you can't paint with a broad brush, this us versus them kind of mentality. He was part of that subculture, but he was also deeply complex and even conflicted at times. He was a magnificent artist. He's probably the best single true artist I've ever had the opportunity to work with. Very true to his muse, to his heart. Uncorrupted. His art, I felt, was uncorrupted by commercial concerns and things of that nature. And it was a wonderful thing to be a part of it. If you guys will remember, it became something. I mean, at first it was just four guys, and then he had other people out on the road with him, but we were the core band. That band actually solidified in his mind by 97, and it's probably sooner. This was the Ragamuffin Band. It wasn't all those other people. This was it in his head, which honestly I think surprised all of us. I know it surprised me a bit because I thought, well, maybe it's just a floating concept that guys can be introduced to. It was not in his mind, and I appreciated that loyalty, and I was so excited to see what he was going to do with this now that he had a ragged but good band to back up his music, which is something he hadn't really had before on a consistent level, that were invested in him, and he was invested in us. And it was shattering when he passed.
Yeah.
It was utterly shattering. I don't think I even processed it. I mean, I went into a tailspin personally over the next 3 years. All we were trying to do and being left with this job to essentially curate his musical legacy for a period of time anyway, as people were, picking at his bones, it seemed.
Right.
We've talked about that. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but I don't know that I'll ever have a real handle on why he isn't with us still. But it brought faith into my life, and it brought faith into my heart. Faith in art, faith in Christ, faith in friendship, in community. That's what it meant to me.
Cool. Mark, what was your takeaway from your experiences with Rich?
Well, I think Rick and I have always had a lot in common with like struggling with not so much faith itself, but the culture of it, and I felt like if you're going to attempt to merge faith and art, I don't think anybody touched Rich personally. Like he had them locked together right. And he also, in my experience at least, I'd heard growing up in, coming up in church, once I became a Christian around age 18, everybody always talked about a personal walk, personal relationship, and no one let you have one. You know what I mean? It's like you always felt. I remember we were in this one prayer thing one time at a gig, and Jimmy said the funniest thing that echoed my experience, which is like, "Lord, please saddle us with guilt," which was his reaction to these people's weird, overly shepherding approach to the thing. But Rich actually, he allowed it to be personal. He liked individuals. He didn't want to fix your weird quirks. Because really, in certain ways, we're four very different people. And like four different backgrounds in a lot of ways. And I think he saw that as the good thing, not the bad thing. He didn't attempt to make us a homogenous, one thing. We didn't start dressing the same. We never did. Yeah, everybody had a very distinct personality, and he seemed to he championed it, which helped me as an insecure musician. And I was kind of a late bloomer too to getting into being a full-time player and all that. I didn't until I was 30 and 29, something like that. But he really allowed you to walk your own walk, and he encouraged you to. And whenever we did devotion stuff out on the reservation, it was sort of like, hey, I do this thing at 8:30. If you can't be there at 8:30, don't come at all. And we're just, I don't know what we're going to do, but and he allowed it to be so personal. And, which is why I think he had that great affinity with Brennan Manning, because he was very similar. And, but for me, I got that sense with Rick, but for me, I just go I guess it's okay to be like this. There's nothing wrong with this. It's okay to not be the thing.
I didn't feel like I had to be anybody but myself when I was playing with Rich. In those few years when I kind of backed into Christian music, and I remember at Cornerstone, my first time I played Cornerstone, my first album would come out, and something happened, and I said a cuss word on the stage. And I didn't know anything about Cornerstone. I didn't realize it was a bunch of hippies that probably didn't care. But to me, it was like, it's like I thought I'd just completely blown the lid off of some ruse I was supposed to kind of keep up. And around Rich, I don't think there's anything I could have told him at all that would have made him turn his back on me. And one of the ways he did that is by telling you every horrible thing he'd ever thought or done the first time you met him. Sort of like, now, if you can match that, you probably can't, so we're going to be good.
I loved his sense of adventure. He would go to great lengths to trap. I watched him do it with Mark. I watched him do it with Rick. I watched him do it with Aaron, and I certainly watched him do it with me. He would set up your fall, and he would do that in such an ingenious way. And over the years now, in the rearview mirror, now we've got 20 years distance from his passing, and the thing that has come to reveal itself to me is that he was writing songs at 17 that later found their way. The Jesus record, the title song, Jesus, in fact, was laying around from college days. And so here's this guy that seemed like he could just, I was always trying to get him to write with me. I wanted to co-write with Rich. And, he would hand me a lyric once in a while and say, here, see if you can do anything with this. And someday maybe I will. But his ability to recognize his poetic, his vision was so lost on me at the time. It's taken me so many years to discover this guy that made, I mean, how many records? Maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 records worth. But what I've recently discovered is that there's another 130 songs out there that, with a little care, could potentially be another 9 records. Now, you know, it could be argued no one wants that. But on the other hand, for me personally, whether anything develops out of that stuff sitting around or not, what it proves to me is that this guy was the real deal. And like Rick said, I'm not sure. I may have been lucky enough to work with a handful, and he has by far the most unbelievable use of language. And musically, you know, I mean, I think I discovered early that singer-songwriter thing that was in him was matched by his ability to kind of orchestrate these big show tune movements, like Sing Your Praise to the Lord, you know, time changes and jerks here and jerks there and left, right, back into the center. And he had about 3 different voices that he exercised regularly. And he only revealed to us, even though we were really close to him, he only revealed to us a tiny window into what he was really up to. And so that element of surprise and discovery and adventure is something that I think, for me, the takeaway for the rest of my life is partly that I was already kind of that way by nature, but he affirmed and confirmed the obvious that just do that, you know, and win or lose. I mean, he was lucky. Not lucky. He was fortuitous. He met the times with the proper, cred to Reed. He turned. I've heard those demos, man. It's like how Reed made it commercially accessible could be either looked down on or applauded. And now in the rearview mirror, I have to applaud it, because I don't think anybody would have got him if he was just making his demos and throwing them out there. I think that it had to be shined up in a way to meet that audience. But that ability to curate where art and faith meet in your life is up to you. It's completely your decision. And with Rich, we had a model of how to do that, and I'm forever grateful for having spent so much, but in the rearview mirror again, so little, because it seems like 20 years of activity could have created a whole nother mountain's worth of interesting views and vistas. Yeah. So I'm sorry that we don't get to enjoy that, but yeah, very grateful for the short bit of time that I had with him.
Yeah, I am too. It's a funny, when I got in the band, I was still a new believer, pretty much, in the scheme of things, and I did have a view of how I thought you should be as a Christian, and how it should go, and Rich shattered all that, and it took me a while to kind of put the pieces back together and just go with the flow and find myself and find my place in that. And then right after that, in between that and the Ragamuffin Band tour, I did that tour with another CCM artist that was very conservative. And, coming out of the Ragamuffin Band and going into that, I just started looking at my faith in a different way. And I was pretty silent during that period. I didn't have too much to say to anybody about my faith or anything, because I was going through personal upheaval, and I was trying to figure out, Christianity and this whole thing. And I know that we all were going through different things, and it's been really great to sit here and hear you guys talk about your experiences. And, we should get together soon and go out and have a beer or a cup of coffee and just hang. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in today. And we all loved Rich and his music, and we know that there are millions of you out there who appreciated Rich as well. And thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.